Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to the show where we chat,
We are
argue, and
Sex
wax the.
Bomb. One.
We're talking Scott Pilgrim versus the world. I'm Mike. That's Brandon. This is a 2010 film from Edgar Wright, based
Yes.
off of the incredible comic book series by Brian Lee O'Malley. It's a cool romantic comedy, action, adventure, slice of life type of book series. And Edgar Wright adapted into an incredible breakout cult classic of the 2010s. Brandon, I guess I just want to start basic questions. What one? How you been? It's been a minute. Two, what was your? When did you first watch Scott Pilgrim? When were you introduced to this film? Because it's 13 years old now.
I have no idea when I first watched it. I have no idea. I know that I may have started, I may have found it by accident, and I know I loved it the first time I saw it. I enjoyed it so much.
Mm.
Um, since that first watch, I've known for the longest time that it is based on a book, and it's been one of those books one of those series that's always been like somewhere on my list that I need to go check out at some point. Like it needs to
Yeah.
happen, right? So I just haven't gotten around to it. Um, and I after watching it again now for our in-depth discussion at the Shadow After, it's I, I love this film. I love how creative it is. I love how unique it is. I love this how stylish it is. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny because we know that no one does Edgar Wright films better than Edgar Wright. You know what I mean? Like throughout the
We've literally
years,
seen that.
yeah, throughout the years, we have seen how he has, in a way, perfected his own voice and his own style. Not that it needed to be better, but
Yeah.
how it's developed through the years. I remember that the first Edgar Wright film that I ever saw was Shaun of the Dead, which was a surprise hit in my book in theaters. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time, one of my favorite zombie films of all time. And I'm a big zombie fan. Like I'm still going through The Walking Dead and a bunch of stuff, but I love the quirkiness, the comedic timing, the wit that's in the way that he shoots things, in the way that he does dialogue, in the way that he creates character interactions. And and when he grabs Scott Pilgrim versus the World and he makes this movie with, by the way, a stellar cast of people. Like almost
Oh yeah.
every person in this cast is now A-list movie star. like like this probably was a beginner role for a lot of people, which is funny to say. Like one of them is headlining the biggest Marvel movie of the year, Marvel Studios movie, to be specific, which is the Marvels, right? Which is Brie
Right.
Larson, even though she has such a small part in this film. But
But that's the thing. She had a small part in this movie. That means she wasn't the big megastar
right
Academy Award winning actress
at
yet,
that
right?
point, right,
Right.
and he brings Edgar Wright brings his voice and his unique eye for style and recognizing what makes this franchise so popular and turns it up to 11. And it's funny because nowadays when I see little comic book strips or pictures like the one behind us, and when I see the trailer for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, which is the new series that's coming out on Netflix next in a couple of weeks, I love the fact that Edgar Wright had his hand on the pulse from the very beginning
Yeah.
because this movie feels like that book and like that series is going to be, which he's also executive producing. So that's a lot of fun. I love this film.
This movie is great. If you haven't seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World, do it. Definitely. But
Now,
I guess we'll do a little breakdown. Basically, 23-year-old Scott Pilgrim is just living his life. It's very much that it gives me vibes of like a lot of the romance slice of life anime that we cover over on the Amateur Otaku, right? Like you see this, and even though it's live action, I get really strong like Kaguya-sama Love is War type of vibes, just how wacky and crazy the romance is in this movie, or how it gets. And I think that's kind of the cool balance that Wright brings to this movie. It starts off very kind of low key, and it doesn't get too crazy until like the second act of the story. It's just awkward Michael Cera meeting equally awkward Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ramona Flowers, Scott Pilgrim, right? Um, like you said, this cast is great. Like we have Kieran Culkin, one of the biggest shows of the year just ended, Succession. He's just here as Wallace Wells. It's amazing. It's like sure, Chris Evans playing big macho movie star before he was a big macho movie star. It's amazing. I love it. It's so great. But yeah, I think the vibes of this movie are very interesting because it doesn't hold back, but it also like kind of eases you into it. Like the cinematography, I think sticks out a lot in the early shots of this movie because the lack of a score in some of those early moments, and then the weird kind of off-putting camera angles
Yes.
makes you feel that something's a little bit off, right? A little bit different. This isn't our normal reality.
Right.
And then I think it just kind of gets turned up as we get going. But what was the standout moment for you that made you say, "I love this movie"?
It's hard to say, but on this
Yeah,
rewatch, the first smile is as soon as I see the Universal logo. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I feel that it's been ages since I've seen it. Like, well, actually, to be honest, it's been a long time since I've seen a movie with so much style from the first shot. And it reminds me also a recent movie that reminds you a lot of that. I think the Barbie movie does it, but more importantly, Across the Spider Verse. The idea that the production companies that made this movie are not
yeah.
more important than the movie, so the style of the movie takes control of those logos.
We
And I,
had this like the 16-bit logo intro, and
yes,
then the
and the
digitized
music,
version of the music. Yeah,
yes, yeah. And from that moment, to me, it was just great. And also the way of doing conversation, like the shorthand. You know,
yeah.
everything is shy-ish and limited, or it's either uber quiet or uber exaggerated. There's never nothing in the middle. But that's where it started for me. And like you said, it's something that feels like reality, but in a way, especially with the sound effect, with the onomatopoeia
Yeah.
throughout throughout the different frames. That those are like the first hints that you get of, oh, wait a minute, this is not a normal place.
Kim Pine is specifically just ripped from like the 60s Batman with every action she does.
Yes, yes. Every time you go,
uh
and you can see the bang, like she does it multiple times. By the way, she's amazing.
oh yeah, Allison, she did a fantastic job with this role. She's one of my favorite characters because she's just in the background. Like every time she speaks, she's like the only sane person in the room. She's like, yeah,
Yep,
she's the only one who kind of knows it's ridiculous, but she's
yep.
also the most over the top because, like you said, she has the onomatopoeia sound effects pretty much whenever she does an action. Um, I appreciate, like you mentioned, the quietness. I think that to me is one of the film's strengths, especially when it comes to Michael Cera's performance as Scott Pilgrim, right? Because one of the funniest parts of this movie is in seeing it how it all plays out is Scott beats every single person who crosses his path, but also he seems like he's the weakest, shyest guy you will
Yes,
ever see. I guess I'm saying it sets this playing field kind of even to where, like, yeah, you can feasibly buy that Scott Pilgrim is like the strongest man in the world.
and it's interesting that we are encountering, or we are witnessing these encounters for the first time when Scott encounters them. But
Right.
apparently, this is a normal occurrence because on one side, Ramona tells a story about how she ended up beating up the entire football team, with
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Patel, and then Scott taught. Well, I had to fight like 96 people and a large giant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's like little simple throw of words here and there that let you know, okay, so these kind of things happen. And I think that's accentuated by Kieran Culkin, which, by the way, he's like the unspoken hero of this movie.
He's so good in this role,
He is
man. I love
so
him.
amazing. It's like the way he just gossips and ruins Scott's life, or with his sister, like how quick it is. It's like a freaking ninja of gossip. It's
Yes.
phenomenal. How every time they wake up, he has a different partner, and they all know Scott's mess. Um,
Not just having a different partner, the old partner doesn't leave. So it just keeps multiplying.
how big
And
is
it's
his
like
bed? Um,
it
but
man's
the
got game. I gotta give it to him.
well, he turned. Apparently, he's been turning Scott's sister's boyfriends in perpetuity. Apparently, um, that's
Scott's sister, Anna Kendrick, Stacy Pilgrim, by the way, which is again
yes.
another
Again,
underrated poll.
yes. So one of my favorite things is that every time I love, and I also like how he's over reality. He's over it.
Mm.
Like in the first instance, when the first evil X shows up. But by the way, every X is more over the top than the last, which I find hilarious. And every single one, the one that plays Matthew Patel, the one that plays the um, Lucas Lee, Brandon Routh, freaking Superman as super vegan man. You know what like
Yeah.
but Kieran Culkin, the first time he goes, he screams, "Fight!" But then every other one, fight. Hey, just fight him. Like, and then he just loses all energy. I find it hilarious.
Yeah. He's over it. And it's so funny. It's interesting, the approach to this story just as a whole from Edgar Wright, because I know in the book and in the animated series, when Scott first meets Ramona, she's in like his mindscape, right? And he's like, I had this vision of this girl. They the story generally uses a lot more of that and like this other world, like super sci-fi type of stuff that this movie nods to, but then completely does away with that because yeah, Ramona travels through Scott's mind highway thing to get around. Like that
There's
that's not her just being
right. She's
good.
a super powered being apparently that does these
Yeah.
things. She sees a
And that's
door.
not the
That's her superpower.
yeah, that's not like a joke. She's
Yeah.
being 100% serious. And I just think it's fascinating how Edgar Wright again honors the source material by still
Yes.
including it in the movie, but he's also like, yeah, that's a little too convoluted. We're not gonna dive too deep into that, but it's enough for you to be like, okay, something's up with Ramona and her weird exes because she then has a purse that's like this big, and then she just pulls a giant mallet right out of it. And it's just like,
No, no,
oh
and
yeah,
when she actually grabs it, it goes bling, like she
exactly.
just grabbed it out of Smash Brothers.
It's so stylized in a way that
Yes.
I love. And I think that's just Edgar Wright's style, and that's why he's one of my favorite directors working right now because he can craft a reality, but then he can also put his own spin on it, like a movie like Baby Driver, right, where it's fantastic and the music rules that entire movie.
Yes.
In this one, it's very much still character driven with the character of Scott Pilgrim and his relationship with Knives, Ramona, and all of these other exes. But it still has the kind of crazy video game movie aesthetic to it, which I think is
Yes.
really, really cool.
And I love the fact that he didn't shy away from the video game tropes that characterize and exemplify the source material. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
didn't make a video game movie that wanted to be real but not much the video game. You know what I mean? Like he didn't
Hmm.
do a Street Fighter or he did He did a Last of Us, kind of like he literally was honoring the source material the way he did it. And I love that what you mentioned, like he kind of did away with the whole sci-fi element of the weird highways that Ramona takes, but he planted the seed there for you to just to at least acknowledge to the viewer there's something otherworldly here. And it's interesting because you see it with every time Scott appears in the desert, desperate or whatever. You see it whenever they go through the doors the first time they go on a date, and then you also see that in the end, right? So those
Yeah.
elements are there, and they are in these very specific story driven points and moments that they stand out, even though you don't dig deeper into them. And I think that's very smart because you know what I mean? Like you can go away and say like there's always gonna be that one fan that says, yeah, but they should have like just gone through it and find the monster. You know what I mean? Like not I'm sorry,
Hmm.
I'm making fun of someone, but I'm sorry, I love
You're making fun of us, honestly. We've had these same type of conversations before.
yes.
Why didn't you do this? Why didn't
Yes.
they fight the bloater longer? I'm just saying, we've had these conversations on this
Why
channel.
couldn't they take the bloater down? Um
Right.
I mean I'm kinda glad they didn't, but so but I
Just
let
makes the Rat King harder in future seasons. That's all I'm saying.
buddy. That's a tank. Um but yeah, like I like the fact that he did it to make sure like I think he understood that it was enough to say that Ramona is this person that doesn't belong in this world. And that's part of what makes her special. You know what
Yeah,
I
she's
mean?
from the United States.
That and that's the other thing. The whole thing about the mystical world of Toronto, Canada, like which is funny because it also it's like a hyper reality also kind of. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
because even us Americans, we tend to say that Toronto's a different place, Canada's a different place, life works differently. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and those are the kind of things that I find hilarious because it has its roots on real things, on real thoughts, and they're just making it hyper stylized and fun to watch and enjoy. But more importantly, I like that they don't interfere with the story they're trying to tell because Brian O'Malley's story and the story that Edgar Wright is able to share with us in this film is a very real story. You know, all of us in one way, shape, or form, we know what it is. I would hope so. We all know what it is that something is hard to move on from something in our lives. And sometimes
Yeah.
we make bad decisions because we don't know how to move on. And that's the whole thing with Scott. Like he becomes a hero in his own life, not to save others, in his own life, as he takes the matters in his own hands to make the decisions that he needs to make to move on, and
Yeah.
then help the people that he affected move on as well. So these are the to me these are the best stories. The best stories are the ones that take something very simple, something very 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 close to the human condition, but find a very wacky and fun way to explain it without losing its meaning. And that's definitely
It
what this is.
Yeah, it's very much a coming of age story, but
Yep.
it's the type that we don't see often. Most of them are about high schoolers and like how do you navigate
Yes.
high school? How do you become an adult? This is very much Scott is an adult and he's still trying to figure out
Yeah.
the adult thing because you don't like once you turn 18, it doesn't click, right?
Right.
You don't become the hero that Spider-Man wants to be, right? At
Right.
the age of 18. It doesn't magically work itself out.
Right.
And so I love how flawed of a character Scott is to the point where why is he dating knives at all? Why are we acting like this is okay? And
No,
it's like,
nobody's acting like it's okay. Everybody's letting it ride, but
oh,
of
everybody
course,
around. I'm talking about Scott specifically. He's like, well, we haven't kissed or anything. Yeah, but you're still kind of dating knives, bro.
see here, I want to bring one of the best lines in the whole movie. Scott, you're the salt of the earth. Oh, thank you. Oh no, I meant you're the scum of the earth. That's Kim telling that to Scott. I,
It's it. It's true. But yeah, like Scott is still very much in the place of
Yeah,
he's not the greatest guy. He's not had the greatest luck. He's doesn't, like, and I think that's why Ramona and Scott also get along because on one hand, they both want to experience something different. Ramona is not like Envy Adams, Scott's ex-girlfriend.
yeah,
She's not like Knives either, right? She's bringing a different side of Scott out of himself, and I think Scott is very much like Ramona even says in the movie, "You were the nicest guy I've ever dated."
yeah.
And so I think it's really about the two of them also finding themselves and confronting, like you said, their past and that baggage, but also realizing when you're in a relationship, the other person does have baggage, just like you do yourself. The
Right,
question is, how do you work through it together?
right.
Right. And so I think those again are the deeper, more philosophical questions that this movie presents.
Yeah.
Even though we're still gonna have the bombastic, ridiculous kaiju fight, from rock music. We're gonna have Chris Evans like, "Oh, I'm gonna grind down these rails, bro," and then just dies.
And suddenly
It's so much.
he has a million stunt doubles. Like the whole thing with the stunt doubles is hilarious. I'm gonna go get a coffee. Y'all guys want anything?
That was so funny.
Yeah.
I love Chris Evans in this movie. Lucas Lee. I hate to say it. This was one of my favorite roles from Chris Evans. He does so many other serious roles. It's like, nah, but Lucas Lee though, fantastic.
I love how when
Oh
he goes
man,
like, "You think you can go me to do this trick, bro?" Oh, but all the ladies watching, and you can just see his eyes. And he's just like,
yeah, you just see him glance
"Give
away.
me a board."
Just
Um, yeah, that's funny. That is funny. Now, I
so
want to go
funny.
back to what you were talking about, Ramona and Scott. I
Yeah,
love that what actually brings them together also, not just the fact that they were interested in each other or one, is that they both were people that were lost, that feel lost. They both wanted an escape from some aspect of their lives. And that's really what brought them together because Ramona's running away from her past and trying to start over without actually dealing with her past. And
hmm
and Scott doesn't want to deal with her past, doesn't want to deal with his past, and is stuck, but doesn't want to leave. Like he's the different. Like you always have people that don't want to deal with their past, but just remain stuck in the same area. And even though Ramona ran away, she was still stuck, just like Scott. She was
right,
just in a different place. So I like the idea that both of them were in that emotionally. That was the same place that they were, and that's how they find each other. And I love that this movie really takes it seriously. Like it's funny. The most serious thing in this film, like serious thing in this film, is Scott and Ramona's relationship. Like the fights that they have, the discussions that they have, even though there's comedic bits in there. But when they actually talk about their baggage, that is the most
yeah,
serious talk you'll hear in the entire film. And I actually applaud it for the fact that we're able to care about these characters in the midst of all the craziness of Scott punching this person in the boob, probably like 4 scenes earlier. Um,
poor Roxy.
yeah, poor Roxy. But you know what I mean? Like it's those are the kind of things that I think elevate the movie in a very
Yeah,
nice way because you could have any other director, any other writer would have just focused on the fantastical elements, right? Which or you would oversee how important these these discourses between him and Ramona were. But I'm glad that they're put front
yeah,
and center because they literally almost break up. They break up pretty much because of these conversations. And it's not till Scott earns the power of self-respect that he's able to start
I
over later
love.
on.
I love how he's like, "Huh, I think I learned something. If only I wasn't dead." It's like, I also love though that they remind us that he did get a one up because we see him get the one up earlier in the movie,
Yes, yes.
and
No,
it's
and
just
the
like
way he does it, the
nice
way
payoff.
the line, Scott, what are you doing? I'm gonna go. I'm getting a life, and he grabs the and starts running towards Ramona, which
Yeah,
again, so great.
it's fantastic, man. It really is. It's again like that's why I compare it to a lot of the best slice of life animes because, like you were saying, a- in those types of shows, they are very fantastical and they have these crazy antics going on in the background. But at the end of it, it's still about those two main characters, and I think I think the people behind this film, specifically Edgar Wright and his direction, because again, this is a movie that's under 2 hours long. It's very short, all things considered. And I don't know how much content from the books they necessarily cut because I haven't had the chance to go through them. I think everything that they do include though, like the pacing's there, it feels tight, it feels very quick. And we don't linger on any particular X or any particular plot point too long where it feels like it's overstaying its welcome. And I think like the way that they introduce the evil X's is very organic, right? It kind of just like when we meet Lucas Lee, they just happen to be going. That's where Wallace wanted to go. That's the celebrity he was crushing on the entire time, right? And it's like
Yes,
very organic on how we got here, and they just do that throughout the movie. It's not like, hey, here's the next boss, here's the next
right.
level, you know?
There's a story driven reason of why they're going to these places, and it just so
Right.
happens that you know apparently he has this big target on his back.
It's a little contrived, I will say, with Todd Ingram. He just conveniently is dating Envy. Sure, I
True,
guess. Yeah, I
true.
don't hate it, but it's like that's the one who's like, huh, we had to get this guy here somehow, I guess. Pull
No,
his
but
vegan
it did
powers.
allow us to hear one of the greatest lines in the film. Do you know what that line
Gelato
is?
isn't vegan.
It's milk and eggs, bitch. The response, it's milks and eggs, bitch. Like, oh my god. That is the funniest thing ever, bro. And the fact that after they de-veganize him, they run away, jump, and high five like the corniest.
His frosted tips just fall down. It's just like
Yes.
what that entire
After
setup is so
punching the
ridiculous.
highlights out of knives.
He punched the highlights out of her hair. Oh man.
Oh, young
That
Neil. Uh,
young Neil is so funny.
yes.
What do you play? Zelda? Like that's not like come on, young Neil. Come on, man.
Yes.
You play bass. You're in the band, dude.
Come
Chill
on, bro.
out.
Apparently he doesn't know the lyrics though, but he's in the band. Um, I man, this film is so good. I was looking at. Can we talk about someone I want to talk about? Oh, so the whole thing with can we talk about how Edgar Wright so creatively and brilliantly allowed us to have the full range of Audrey Plaza's cursing ability without breaking the PG-13 rating of the movie.
One of my favorite out of context bits from this movie is how are you doing that with your mouth? It's like, okay. I see what we did here.
Yes,
Y'all are wrong, but so good. Aubrey Plaza's great. Like Julie Powers,
yes,
again, one of the few characters who understands just how big of a scumbag Scott actually has been throughout the story. Like you
yes,
can tell that she's just over it. Like when the movie starts, she's like, "I don't care about you, Scott Pilgrim. You're the worst. You're not invited. Come on, dude."
yes, yes. It's like I told you not to. Boop. Ramona Flowers, and also at the end of the whole thing with Envy, when Envy's sitting by, I was like, oh no. It's like shut up. Envy does it too. So it's
Yeah.
it's the little things, Mike. It's the little things. Now, of course, we gotta talk. We have to talk about Ellen Wong as Knives Chow. First off, what kind of a name is Knives? Like, how does that even work?
I thought it was a nickname, but then we see the final boss at the end of this thing, and she's like, "Oh no, okay, she has knives. I get it. It's subtle." No, but Ellen Wong is great. I love the story of pain and revenge that Knives is going through in the background of the main plot, because
Yes.
we have that. I don't know if we cut back to her and her sister or one of her friends. It's just like she's having a meltdown. It's like, what is going on, Knives? Come on, kid.
There's one moment where what's the name of the character? The front man of the band. What's his name? Steven.
Steven
Yeah,
Stills.
so Steven goes, "We need merch. We need stalkers." And suddenly in the window you see Knives, just her face. And you know that it was all shock value for us because nobody else for some reason noticed that she's there.
You
And then
see, I had a different read of that. I assumed that she just does that all the time, and they were ignoring that she was there. Not that they didn't know she was there.
the whole cool thing is when they're walking into the party, I think it is. That's like again another funny bit, and this is the type of creative endeavors that I love from Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
She Scott is talking to Ramona, and they're talking about the whole thing with Knives, and he goes, "Oh, Knives is fine. She's with a young Neil now. Everything's okay." And as they're walking in the background, you can hear Knives go, "No."
Yes. It's like her soul left her body. It's so sad. It's so funny.
Yes.
No, but I love that. I love Ellen Wong's performance. I think all the performances are really strong in this movie. And specifically with the X's, because they have the least amount of screen time when you really
Yeah.
think about it. They show up for like 10 minutes and then they're out. But I feel like they all kind of maximize their
They all
time.
definitely
And
stand out. In
right.
Yeah.
So I think that again is it's just shout out to the script, shout out to the actors for and the director, of course, for making the best of those performances. Because it's hard to have a movie filled with like 7 to 8 cameos and being like, oh yeah, I remember, and these guys all left a lasting impact.
Yes.
Um, so I think that alone is just a testament to, again, how great this cast was in general, but also the script and how tight it is to be like, hey, when we get Gideon and he only shows up for like really 2 or 3 scenes for the entire movie, but you still remember him and he's still great because Jason Schwartzman is just fantastic.
His ability to choose scenery is so great.
Yeah.
So great. You make me swallow my gum. Everything is
It's
so
gonna be
great.
in my digestional tract for the next 70 years.
I love that the spot is stealing the spotlight, not just in Spider-Man, but here as well. See, I wasn't planning on doing this crossover, but I've done it.
Hey, we did the thing.
We did the thing. But yeah, like his ability of chewing scenery is so great. By the way, out of nowhere, Naruto reference for some reason because he does the jutsu at the end to get into boss mode. Apparently,
That,
I
that
love that
was
every
so
time he
funny.
did it, he got like a power up. And I don't know if you noticed
Yeah,
it that when he goes into full final boss mode, he has the X in his glasses. Like it's
that's amazing.
he does the whole thing. It's great.
Yeah, I will say I'm glad you brought up the Naruto thing because the Naruto movie is happening. Unfortunately, that was announced.
When?
Uh, this well, this was announced a couple weeks ago.
Like officially, like on Netflix, or is it happening like?
I think it's Lionsgate. Lionsgate is making it, so it'll be a theatrical release. But I'm sorry that you found out this way. We could have led you to that conversation a bit a bit
I
better.
mean, I'm not gonna say I
But
feel bad. I mean, part of me hopes that seeing the tragedy of Cowboy Bebop and seeing the success of One Piece, it's
Yeah.
hopefully letting people know, hey guys, this is how you don't do it. This is how you do it. You know what I mean?
Just name the movie Naruto: The Land of Waves. Perfect. Just do
Yes.
that. Just do
Just
that.
let's do
Don't
Sabuza,
overthink it.
move
Right.
on, and we're fine. We get a
Yeah.
great
Just
Kakashi moment. We get a great Sasuke moment. We get a great moment where we don't know whether he's a, you know, we don't know what they are. You know what I mean? It's like you get all the elements that make that arc unique and stand out. That's all you
right.
need.
You can tell that in a good 2.5 hours,
Yeah.
probably 2 hours
And you
if you really
can
want
and you
to.
can and you can do that and still start off with the whole Iruka Sensei arc and where he learns
Yeah.
the Shadow Clone Jutsu. You can still do all that.
You can
The,
tell that in flashbacks too if you want. But I did all that to say the Gideon scene just was like, yeah, when you get to the third act of that movie, you're just gonna have Kakashi and Zabuza film it the exact same way. And you see the water dragons just emerge from out the sea right above them. That's how you do it.
and
Edgar
find
Wright
out
gave
that
you the blueprint.
it's gonna be the same type of dragon that was in the Battle of the Bands. Find out that Edgar Wright is gonna be hired to do Naruto.
That would be
Interesting.
really fun. I don't think
Yes.
he's the attached. I think they have a director attached already, but if he wants to come on and be a writer, why not? Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love what they did visually, what they did again streamlining things a bit more. I really loved I really love what they kind of did with Scott's friends. I think that's an element that doesn't really get touched on a lot. Like his bandmates do care about him and they do put up with his crap. And they're not afraid to call him out on his crap either. Like
Yes.
case in point, Knives. So I think kind of showing that he has that support group is something that we don't see a lot. And again, in these coming of age stories, the main character is I'm alone and I have to figure this out. Sorry. Yeah, I'm alone and I have to figure this out. The small violin plays and I appreciate that. It's like, no, Scott has a roommate who, by all accounts, Wallace and Scott do get along, even though he kind of gives him crap.
Yeah.
And he has friends who legitimately care about him, even though he has people who hate his guts, like Julie.
Right.
So it's like Scott's life isn't completely terrible, like Naruto's, right? But he still has to figure things out for himself. That's what makes that final moment when he's fighting Gideon of him like realizing, hey, maybe I'm part of the problem. It's not just Ramona and her evil exes that are the issue here. I also have to do some soul searching. And I
Right.
think kind of being mature enough to set that entire plot line up was very cool.
I want to fight it. I want to fight you for me. Like getting to
Yeah.
that moment. Um, can we talk about his support system? Because I gotta talk about Wallace again. In
Have you
talking,
noticed that my background's been changing every 10 minutes like Ramona's hair?
you got to keep that in the video, by the way. That's amazing.
It's changed like 4 or 5 times. I don't know if you caught it.
Well done, Michael Flowers. Well done. Um, we've done all the things. We've done the Spider-Man bit. We've talked about Naruto. We got Ramona Flowers' hair, and we're doing okay. Um,
Doing good.
Wallace is
Audio
the
listeners, this is why you watch on YouTube.
yes.
Wallace, go.
Wallace is the best and worst friend, in the sense that he is the best friend because he doesn't stab him in the back; he stabs him in the front by telling the truth. I love how he goes, "Hey, man, I just want you to know I'm gonna need the bed for the rest of the day, and the rest of the week, and the rest of the month." And it's like, now that you got Ramona, you can move out because I gotta kick you out.
It's so funny because it's also like how much time has passed? I guess the movie does at least say like, hey, she changes her hair what every 1.5 weeks,
every other week, yeah.
every other week, yeah, something like that. So it's
Yeah.
like that's our barometer of how much time has passed. Like I don't
So
think
if we see her change her hair,
right,
yeah.
we know like 2 weeks have passed.
Also, another interesting barometer metric of time can also be the space between fights or concerts, because you got to figure
Mm,
most of the time concerts happen when in the weekends, right? So it's not like
yeah.
you're having multiple battle events every week. So these are events that have months and weeks and months on end. So this is an ongoing situation. So
Right, but for
very
Wallace
interesting.
to be like, "Hey, move in with Ramona," it's like, bro, she changed her hair once. It hasn't even been a month yet. Slow down, dude. Slow down.
Yes, yes, 100%. Um, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She is amazing in this
She's fantastic.
film. Hardest line in the movie. We have, and then she says all the tea flavors. Like that was not done in one take. There is no way that was done in one take. And if it was, I need that DVD to watch. Yes, I said DVD. I need that DVD to see the deleted scenes. I need to know how many takes that took because that is some verbal grammatical prowess.
That scene it's amazing. It again kind of shows the chemistry, the awkward chemistry between
Yes.
Ramona and Scott, because when we're first introduced to her, one, I appreciate that we have that still shot of both of them just like leaning against the wall, right? And he's like talking about Pac-Man and Puck-Man. And it's like, sure. But one thing that you may notice that she's not the life of the party, even though everybody's saying she's the cool one. Like she's also a wallflower, much like Scott. And getting once we get to her house, you kind of see her personality break through a little bit, and it's like, yeah, he talks about Pac-Man, she talks about her various tea flavors. That's
Yes.
why they do have the same kind of quirks. It's just a little bit more subtle because the story's being told from Scott's perspective,
Right.
right? Um, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think, just handles that beautifully, where we kind of see Ramona's apprehensiveness of it all too, because she wants to open up to Scott and be with Scott, but also she knows her evil exes are still lurking in the background, and that is a legitimate fear of hers
Yeah.
because again, the whole meta theme of the entire story is being able to open up, being able to deal with your past, with your baggage, with your trauma, and move on from it and grow from it. And like you were saying before, since she's running away from it, it puts a lot of strain on her, and you can see just how tense she is throughout the story, just by how Winstead performs the role, with how she's kind of always lurking behind Scott and his friends, or how she's rarely making eye contact with anyone. You can kind of feel that unease in her performance, which I think is really cool.
Yep. She never. She always makes sure that you are unaware of her, which I think is a very
Mm,
interesting take in performance. Right. When you're performing, you're supposed to be front and center. But
right.
that character in particular, her performance shines because she goes out of her way to make herself make sure that you are unaware that she's around. It's funny because the only reason that she stands out is because the exes appear out of nowhere. That's really the
Yeah.
only reason that everybody knows her name when the exes appear, which I find it very interesting. Um, Literally, the passes with singles are out, which again, another very interesting thematic element into the film that's highlighted very very well. Man, this movie's so
Yeah.
good. Can we talk about the
It's so
music?
much fun. Yeah, shoot. I want to just say Brie Larson killed it with her solo. That was insane. I didn't
Yes,
expect it to be that good.
yes. You mean Natalie? Um, but yes,
Natalie, Envy, Captain Marvel, whatever she goes by these days.
yes, that lady from the room. Um, but
Room. The Room is a completely different movie.
110%, you're right. I want to see. You imagine when they remake the movie is real life. You're
I
tearing
did
me
not hit
apart,
her.
Lisa. Um,
So anyway, how's your sex life?
uh,
Uh,
well, hi, Mark.
we have to. We
Yes,
gotta cover The Room at some point, even if it's for April Fool's Day. That
you know,
movie is
you know what we should do?
ridiculous, bro.
We should watch The Room and The Disaster Artist, and then do a chatter after talking about the whole thing, and
One's a
how
bad movie, one's a great movie, so why not? Yeah, that sounds fun.
and how this movie, the original movie, still sells out theaters, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
because
Yes,
sickos like us would go. 'Cause I definitely would go if a
yes,
screening was happening near me.
110%. Um, that's not how they
But the
work.
music,
The music was. I was so I feel that I didn't remember how great the music was. And I'm gonna be honest, I kind of want to read the book to see if there's lyrics to the songs in the book, which I would find interesting if they are. I'm not expecting them to be, but if we wrote these songs, not we, but if the songs were written and composed for the film, every song is a banger, bro. I mean, apart from "I Am Very Sad," like, apart from that song, like
yeah.
almost every song is a banger. It's so great. Like there's a lot of great stuff in that song. In all the songs, Envy song, solo, and all that stuff. Um,
This is how I felt when we got to that My Hero Academia festival arc. I'm like, was this song written in the manga in some capacity? And I went back like, no, it wasn't. Good job, Bones. You kind of ate with
yes.
that one. Good job.
Ba, 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 ba. Yes. Yeah, man. That those are the kind of things that make you go. They put the work in, and I'm very happy that they did
Yeah,
because the music in this movie is so great. Um, and I
it
do,
is.
and of course the energy. Alison Pill's energy as Kim is so great. Every time they start, it's like, "We are sex bomb," and she says whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I do like also her line when they're in the Chaos Theater, which, by the way, stupid name for a theater. I do like the whole thing that his
Not inaccurate, though.
correct. I do like the what's the password? Whatever. Cool.
Whatever.
What's the password? Cool. By the way, shout out to Ragman from the Arrowverse. I didn't know he was in this
Yes.
movie, but he was. Um, but I do like the fact
Nelson
that
Franklin's
Gideon's
also in this movie for like
who?
one scene. Nelson Franklin's in this movie for like one scene, and he's hilarious.
Who is Nelson Franklin?
In this movie, he's the one who introduces or tells Scott about Ramona. He's just a
Oh,
comedian. He's fun.
oh, he's the guy that goes. The first album is better than the first album. Like, like
Yeah,
he's that guy that knows everybody. Oh, by the way,
he's just
do the scripters every time someone's presented,
yeah.
and like everybody has a rating for some reason, and has like a characteristic of it. That's cool.
So what's the rating? Is the rating power level? Like if Scott were to fight them, is the rating attractiveness? What is it?
The rating is how they rank in Scott's life o meter. I don't know. That's a very good question. I have a feeling it's a power level. Edgar Wright or
Mm,
Brian O'Malley, we need to know what's the rating.
power level makes the most sense to me simply
Yeah,
because we don't really get like a traditional life bar when he's fighting these people,
yeah,
but we do see like 5,000 points KO and they turn into coins or whatever, and it's like Gideon's number was higher than Lucas's number, right?
of
So it's
course.
like I assume I assume that's their power level. Like this is how hard it's going to be for Scott to beat them. That makes the most sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But if it's
Um,
hotness, that's also funny.
it's hey, we can measure everything nowadays. We can measure anything. Now, I what was I saying? So I love the line when they're in the chaos. I like the fact that the chaos theater, the little throne that Gideon has, it reminds you like a castle. Like you expect that to be like like in every old video game, like Bowser's Castle, whatever. I find that
Yeah.
hilarious. But also how Sex Bombers play music and all they're singing is "We're not having fun. We're not having fun." And before Soul's Scott Pilgrim's first game over, um, when Kim screams, "We are Sex Bomb. We're here to sell out and make money and stuff," and then she starts Like, there's so many great lines in this film. I think it is one of the most memorable films in terms of lines that I've re-seen in a long time. I'm so surprised that I'm remembering all these lines. It's a great film.
Did you not get my email? I skimmed it. It's like I it's so funny.
No,
Like
his reaction when he's reading it. This is so boring.
he just his brain just shuts off. It's just funny because it's like, what did this email say? Because then even Lucas is just like, you really don't know about the league. He's just like, oh, okay, well, let's go get drinks. And then he just sucker punches Scott. Just like, okay, this movie's so ridiculous.
So, if you had a favorite scene, what is your favorite scene?
Ooh, that's tough because there's so many good ones. Seeing Todd's vegan powers, it's so dumb. He knocks Scott
Being
straight up
taken
in the
away
air.
or just seeing the powers?
Well, the fight with Scott, because he knocks Scott straight up in the air, right? Just boom, and then Scott, you just hear go ah, and then he's just gone. And
And then
we cut back to the ground, right? And they're just having a conversation like, how does this work? And he's just like, you use 10% of your brain. The rest of the 90% is occupied by lactose or whatever he says. And then you just hear in the background. It's just like, okay. That's my kind of dumb sense of humor.
No,
honestly.
it's hilarious. It reminds me of. I'm not gonna say you were saying that it's also like the whole ending with Nega Scott. You're
Yes.
thinking that this epic battle is happening, and oh no, we're gonna grab brunch next week.
Yeah, it's
Apparently,
like solo round, and it just cuts away.
apparently, we have so much in common. No shit.
I need Link to team up with Dark Link in the next Legend of Zelda, because why not?
We got to break the timeline. You mean in the movie? Um, that's another conversation for another day.
We don't need a multiverse in a Zelda movie. Let's not do that. We don't need any more.
Yes. I don't know. I I like a lot of I like a lot of. There's this gag that I like. Every time that they're talking about Scott's hair and his that he feels overconscious, and apparently his hair being this long or shaggy has this huge backstory with his breakup, and every time he feels uncomfortable about his hair, he out of nowhere he has a hat.
I like how they set it up the first time, because the first time we do see him grab the hat, it's a normal scene. But each time after, it's just like, your hair's getting a little shaggy. And he's just like automatically just wearing the hat. it's like it escalated.
You know what
so
happened?
much.
It's like he hit pause, went to the equipment screen, and equipped it, and when unpaused the game, he has the hat on. Okay, my favorite scene, I think it's the funniest scene. When Knives goes to Scott and Wallace's apartment, he knocks on the door looking for Scott. And
Yeah.
and Wallace goes, "Oh, you just missed him," and you see Scott jumping out through the window.
What makes that so great is that he doesn't open the window. You hear the glass break. You just hear him go.
Break through the glass, but that's not all. You see him reaching with his arm to grab his coat after he jumps out the window.
It subverts your expectations so much, because you then see him like running behind Knives immediately after, and we cut to Scott walking, and you think that, oh, Knives is gonna chase after him. She doesn't,
because she didn't
it's just
see
over.
him.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a goofy bit.
I have a huge smile on my face because this is so great. But I think we've done it,
It's
man.
so much fun.
I think
We
we've done
did.
it. We did the thing, bro.
We did the thing. It's a fun movie. Does this increase your excitement for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off?
110%. Like, I feel that I've acquired the sort of hype at the end of this podcast.
You
Yes.
know, it's very satisfying because Spider-Man's like right there, so it's like he pulled it right from, from the portal that Scott did.
Yes.
Yeah, I've already talked about, or I've already seen Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. I'm by the time this video goes up, I will still be under embargo, so I can't tell you if it was good or if it was bad or anything like that. But yeah, I think if you rewatch this movie, you would definitely want to revisit this world and also see what the original source material was. Like I want to see the book and see it with that art style because we get hints and glimpses at it of again O'Malley's I don't know if he was the artist or if the artist working on Scott Pilgrim's comic book series. Much like this movie, it's very understated in its art direction. It's very simplistic, and I think that just elevates it a bit more. Or in the sense of this movie, it kind of lays that same groundwork and vibe we were talking that Edgar Wright established in the live action film. So it definitely makes me want to revisit Scott Pilgrim as a franchise in other capacity. I actually just downloaded the video game. It's free on PlayStation Plus if you haven't played it. And Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is going to be another take on the Scott Pilgrim story coming to Netflix November 17th. We will have a review for that, I assume, because why wouldn't we? Um, but yeah, guys, that was our review of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It is currently streaming on Netflix if you want to go rewatch it or check it out for the very first time. It's a witty action rom com that to this day, there's a couple of lines that may feel a little out of touch and outdated. But on the whole, I think you love it just as much as we did on a rewatch. It's a blast. Brandon, was there anything else you wanted to add before we close this?
This is one of the best movies of in the last 15 years. And I think as more people continue to explore it, examine it, or encounter it for the first time, is going to remain one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. Of the genre, of themes, and for these actors. I'm also very excited for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off because the entire voice cast is the original movie cast. So I am very excited about that as well. So it's a Scott Pilgrim multiverse. So I'm excited.
This movie cost $85 million. It only made $49 million at the box office when it came out. It was a certified box office flop, but it's one of those things that I find interesting because over time, again, it's a cult classic. People discovered it, they fell in love with it. It's kind of hard to market. You know, the trailer was a little weird. The concept is strange. Michael Cera as a lead is also a very interesting choice. It's not like you're putting Chris Evans on the front of the poster. You know, no offense to Michael Cera, who is fantastic to this day. He played Alan in Barbie. All of Ken's clothes fit him. He's a great actor.
Yep.
Uh, but but I think one of the things that I find fascinating about this movie is, like you were saying, it is one of the best movies of the last 15 years. And seeing that legend grow and people fall in love with it, whether it be on Netflix or it's airing on TV or a friend recommends it, I don't know if over time Universal remade that money back off of the Scott Pilgrim movie, but I do think that's just the power of cinema, right? Of that word of mouth thing of even though this did terrible in theaters, people grew to love it so much over time that it's getting an animated series and Edgar Wright is producing it
Yes.
and the voice cast is back. It's like even though it started out as a critical fail or a box office failure, it became a critical darling and fans around the world grew to embrace this film. And I just think that's really cool and one of the reasons why even if your favorite movie doesn't do well at the box office, you still tell your friends about it. You still talk about why it's important to you. And eventually the world will see the vision. Even to artists out there. Like Edgar Wright was probably really heartbroken that this movie bombed. But I'm sure he's really excited that the vision, the word again, the opinion of his movie is still high. and the impact it's had has grown over time to the point where, again, we're getting that awesome anime that's about to drop.
So, keep watching movies, make garlic bread, and share with your friends as you watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World on Netflix. And Scott Pilgrim Takes Off when it comes out. Because
Yes,
it's awesome.
it's awesome. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And if you don't have time to watch the YouTube video, that's okay. We're in your podcast feed. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, we
Amazon.
are there. Amazon, exactly. Everywhere. Tell Alexa, hey, play the chatter after. If I triggered her, I'm sorry. That was not intentional.
That was not in the script.
But, guys, thank you for joining us. And until next time, have a nice day.
We are Sex Bomb!